everybody. Welcome into the Sportify podcast, episode 1. I'm your host, Alec. I have along with me Taylor. Taylor, how's it going?
Well, just another day, man. I mean, getting ready for that fun weekend of college football we've got coming up. It's got some big games.
We do have some big games in week 7. Before we jump into week 7, I want to talk about week 6 because we think week 7 is going to be crazy. Week 6 was probably crazier than week 7 is going to be. Week 7 has a bunch of great matchups. Week 6 was upset city all around college football. I think it was 5 of the top 11 teams were upset this week.
I was going to say you had Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri,
USC, Michigan lost,
and USC.
Miami should have lost.
Yeah, Miami dodged a bullet.
They dodged a bullet. Ref missed call, in my opinion, but that's
nor here nor there.
That's not my call. But the big one, obviously, is Bama losing to Vandy.
Yeah,
that's been the talk of college football this week. It's kind of trumped all the matchups, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Really, a lot of memes.
Yeah, it has been meme city for them boys, and it's one of those you never really think that they're ever going to be the butt of a joke. But man, that's a tough loss. You never like to see that one, definitely if you're sitting there at number 1.
Oh, for sure. I do think, however, with as many teams that lost in the top 10, this was the best week for them to lose, given that.
I'll give you that. I mean, it definitely was.
They're not going to fall. The teams ahead of them in the rankings, I could see losing again in the near future. So
yeah,
they'll be right back up there in the top 3 at least, probably in the next couple of weeks.
I mean, they only felt it. I was surprised they didn't fall any further than they did.
Well, every other game was against an unranked opponent as well.
Yeah.
USC lost to Minnesota. Missouri was Texas A&M, but they were ranked 25th.
Right.
They got absolutely just shellacked at Kyle Field.
Yeah, that's always a hard place to play. Kyle Field it's loud.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a tough place to play. And then Washington was unranked as well in their rematch with Michigan. But let's jump into this week. We're going to start by time of kickoff. We're going to talk about all the ranked games, so all the ranked teams that are in action this week. We got about 16 games to go over. So let's just jump right into it. We're going to start with the Friday late kickoff Big 12 matchup, Utah, Arizona State. As of right now, Utah is 4.5-point favorites on the road at Arizona State.
Right,
I blanked on where they play.
Right,
I think it's Tempe.
I was going to say coming off of a very rough week for them too with that loss to Arizona.
Well, they've had to sit on that because they had a bye last week.
That's right, but
so
you still got that bad blood in your mouth. Like that's a rough one to lose.
Absolutely, you're 7.5-point favorites at home against and I wouldn't say struggling Arizona team, but a kind of a middling Arizona team. A lot of people thought they would do a lot better, but yeah, being 7.5-point favorites and losing at home by 13, not a good look, especially when it was, who's going to win, who's at the top of the Big 12. Is it Utah? Is it BYU? Or is it someone else?
Right. And you get to have that conversation later here.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more Big 12.
Game, so
BYU actually plays Arizona. So,
yep.
We'll get to that one a little bit later. But what do you think of this matchup, Utah ASU?
Man, I think it's one of those you sat on that loss and you're coming back into it. I think you've got to be careful on how you're going to approach that game. I think Arizona State's it shows. I mean, Utah's 16th right now, and they're only a 4-point favorite. I mean, Arizona State can play, and I think that's one of those ones that you worry if they're going to get in their head again and have that Arizona game kind of looming in the back. So I think if they come out and they put that loss behind them as they should, I don't think we run into a problem with that. But I think that's one of those. If you come back out and you're struggling and you're got that looming in the back of your head, I think that could be a long night for them, and I think that you could see another loss and potentially out of the top 25 for them.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. As long as Cam Rising's playing quarterback, I would think Utah wins this game. Maybe without not saying no problem, but I think they win it. I think they would cover as long as Cam Rising is playing. If not, I don't know if they cover. They could still win, but it would be like a field goal game if Cam Rising's in. I could see a touchdown to 10-point win for Utah.
I mean, I'd agree with that. We'll see how it plays. Like I said, it's definitely one of those where you'd like to see the best players out on the field for the best opportunity on that, but you never know. It is injuries are part of the game, and like I said, it seems like there's been a kind of a bug on that going around just the country as a whole.
Right. Both teams 4-1. Both have at least one loss in the Big 12 as well. So this is kind of a big game for both teams.
Right. This is your statement game.
I don't think there's a lot of pressure on Arizona State to do well.
Absolutely not.
Because they haven't been great. Like, they didn't come into this season. I think they were definitely in the bottom third of the Big 12 in projected standings. So, again, and they're playing at home. They've had some pretty good games. They played well against Texas Tech. They just came up on the wrong side of that one. They lost by 8. But I still think they played well. They do have a really good running back, Cam Scatabo, I think is how you pronounce it, who probably really is going to be the catalyst for that offense. And if he goes off, I think Arizona State wins this game outright.
Absolutely. We'll see how it plays, but it'll definitely be a good game for them.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely going to be watching that one for sure. For sure.
Let's move on Friday night. We love that.
Oh, what else are we going to do? that's what we want to do. Moving on to the Saturday games. Kicking off at noon, we've got 3 matchups. We're going to start with Alabama and South Carolina playing at Bryant-Denny on Saban Field. They are 21.5-point favorites. You just double check that hasn't moved. It has not. They're still 3 touchdown favorites at home.
Right. And as it should be. I think you get a weird fluke last week against Vanderbilt. I think Coach is going to come. Coach got in their ass this week, and it's going to be one of those ones that I think they come back out this week, and it's all foot on the pedal. Like I said, I would say that they cover that, if not by at least 1 or 2 extra touchdowns. I like the over in that. I like Alabama to cover the over by itself. I think that's going to be one of those ones that you're going to see a different team than you saw last week with them. But I think this is that redemption, come back and you make that statement on going, look, we slipped up. We're back at it and we're here.
Right. The over for that one is 50.5. And I agree with you. I could see Alabama putting up 50 by themselves. No problem. They've got playmakers all over the field. They've got playmakers on their bench that are probably better than a majority of South Carolina's starting roster.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree with that. So I mean, I think.
But that doesn't always translate. No. Last week, there wasn't anyone on that team, on Vanderbilt's team, that was better, talent-wise.
Absolutely not.
And we saw what happened. But I don't think that's going to happen again. It's certainly not going to happen at home. That would be chaos in Tuscaloosa if something like that happened again.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of those ones I wonder if Saban has been approached or said anything to Coach about it. I mean, it's
still early, and it's one loss. You can't be like, oh man, this guy DeBoer just isn't it.
I know. I think DeBoer, he's made a name for himself and he's done well. I think it's one of those that Alabama's a different caliber of what you expect and what's needed year over year, and you've got to stay on top of it. You can't let games like that slip out of your hand and lose to a team like Vanderbilt. It's like they had no business being in that game.
Right, absolutely. The expectations at Alabama are probably the highest at any program.
It's a championship or bust every year.
Absolutely. That's the expectation. So it makes sense. But I agree. I think they cover. I would go, if I was to be generous, I will go 42-17 as my predicted score. But like we both agreed, we could see them going over 50 for sure. And 17's being generous.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's going to be one of those ones where DeBoer had a few fun words for his athletes, and I think it's one of those ones they come out corrected, and I don't think you have any issues with it.
I agree. Next up, we have Clemson on the road at Wake Forest. Clemson are now 20-point favorites on the road. Over under 60.5. Clemson's offense has looked a lot better compared to week 0 when they faced Georgia. It's like a completely different team. Clemson has been blowing people out left and right. I'm going to pull up some of their scores we could talk about. I didn't have it pulled up ready to go, but what do you think?
I was going to say Appalachian State 66-20, NC State 59-35, Stanford they were going 40-14, Florida State last week 29-13. It's like you've definitely seen, and like I said, Florida State was probably since that Georgia game probably one of their tougher opponents. Yeah, I was going to say, and I think you put a big like air quotation in tougher, but I mean I think
they are 1-5.
I mean, we won't talk about the debacle of that this year.
Yeah, we won't be getting into Florida State. Sorry, Florida State fans. We may be talking about that come the end of the year if there's some big changes, but
right.
Yeah, so I think Clemson kind of continues that. They are playing in the ACC, which is not known as a super tough conference. So it's very top heavy. So I think they kind of continue here, and I think they cover this no problem. The over being at 60, it would probably take Clemson scoring 50 to hit that.
Which I think, I mean, it's very doable.
It's definitely not out of the question. They scored 66 against App State, not putting App State and Wake Forest in the same kind of conversation.
I mean, you look at the
but they kind of are.
Wake Forest played NC State last week and got out by less than a touchdown. I mean,
they win that game?
Yes, they did. Let's see what that final score on that. I think it was like 34-29. No, 34-30. So 4 points. Clemson earlier this year played NC in 59-35. So I mean, if that shows there anything, I think Clemson rolls. I think you can see them cover both the spread and the over.
Sure. I like it. On to the 3:30 kind of mid-afternoon kickoffs. We're going to start with Illinois and Purdue, Big Ten matchup.
Skip the Missouri game.
Did I skip? Oh, I did. I skipped the Missouri game.
I mean,
probably for a good reason. They're playing UMass. No disrespect, but come on. They're playing UMass.
Exactly. That should be a walk in the park. 27.5-point favorites. Over on that's 54.5. I don't think there's much to talk about it. I think that is a bounce back game from them after that loss against A&M. I think you come out, you wipe the floor, and you try to get some confidence as you get back into SEC play.
Do you think they hit the over in that game?
I don't. I mean, 54.5 on that is kind of tough. I also, let's see.
I feel like Mizzou would have to score pretty much all the points.
Yeah, they would. And I was to say, let's see. They've only 2 games or 3 that there's been more than 50 points as a whole scored in a game with them. First game of the season, 51-0 Murray State, and then you had the over hit against Vanderbilt, who played them very tough, and they should have lost that game if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And then that A&M game last week where they just got absolutely stomped at 41-10. So I think it's a good one before they get into kind of a rough part of their schedule where they're going to have Auburn, Alabama, and then Oklahoma, 3 straight games. I think that's you need to get some confidence back in your guys and get it rolling so that as you get into some of those big SEC games, you feel like you've got the confidence in what you need.
For sure. I see that one being kind of like very similar to the Buffalo game that they had early.
Yeah.
Like 30, what was it, 34-10?
It was 38-0.
38-0. I could see UMass at least probably getting a touchdown somewhere, but I could see something like that where it's like, high 30s, maybe low 40s.
Yeah, I think
that Mizzou scores, but I don't see them giving up a lot of points either. I don't think their defense was as bad as they showed last week against Texas A&M, especially against a UMass team. Next up on we'll go back to the Illinois-Purdue game. I know I jumped the gun, but we're going to start with the Illinois-Purdue game, Big Ten matchup. Not the most highlighted matchup. Illinois is 22.5-point favorites, and the over/under is 48.5. Both these teams not known for their offense. Illinois really more known for their defense.
Right.
Haven't watched a lot of Illini football. I did watch the Nebraska game that they ended up winning. Their defense looked really, really good. I just don't think that over hits.
No, I don't either. And I mean, even if you look at the game they lost last week to Penn State. I mean, that was a 21-7 loss. And I mean, sorry, I just don't see you being able to put up the amount of points, and your defense is too good that the other team's not going to. Like I said, the most they've scored all season has been 45 against Eastern Illinois.
Right. And then at home, I think this is a kind of a cakewalk for Illinois. They should be able to handle Purdue really easily. Didn't Purdue just get absolutely obliterated last week?
Yeah, by Wisconsin, 52-6.
Yeah, not known for their offense either.
Right, and like I said, I think if you're Purdue, like I said, you've had a rough 4-game stretch. You just may as well you don't like to chalk up wins, but I don't see it getting any easier over the next 4 weeks for them. They've got Illinois, they've got Oregon in the Northwestern, and then they have Ohio State, followed by Penn State. That is a rough 5-game stretch. I don't think you see many other teams that have a 5-game stretch that looks that gross.
Yeah, I think Purdue loses all of those games.
Yeah, I mean, they may have a shot with Northwestern, like I said, but I mean, I don't see.
Even Northwestern has looked better in this year than they have in recent years.
No, absolutely. But if I'm going to give them a potential win somewhere, it's the Northwestern game. I don't think they have a shot over the next 5 weeks of really chalking up too many wins.
I agree. Pretty easy one there. Let's move back to the ACC with Pitt and Cal.
Okay.
Both teams, Pitt is undefeated. They are 5-0. Probably one of the hotter teams in college football. Facing Cal, who just came off of a heartbreaking loss to Miami last week.
They've had two back-to-back games that they were in the ball game for it. 14-9 loss against Florida State, and then you had that one last week that a flip of a coin. I mean, I said Miami. I think if you're Miami, you're happy you got out without catching an L in that game, because it easily could have gone either way.
Yeah, I mean they were down. Well, I would watch the whole thing, and now I can't remember how much they were down in during the fourth quarter.
Yeah, let me say, I'm telling you, like I said,
they were down.
They needed 21 points in the fourth to come back and get that. Like I said,
and they won by one. They ended up winning by one.
Cal had just another field goal somewhere. Like I said, that's a different game.
Cal only had 3 points in the second half.
No, they had 17 in the second half. They had 2 touchdowns in the third, and then you had a field goal in the fourth.
Why did I think they only had 3 in the first? Whatever. Do you think this is where Pitt's road ends on their undefeated season so far? Do you think does Cal put out the fire at what used to be known as Heinz Field?
I think it is going to be. I think it's another potential heartbreaker for them. I think it's going to be one of those, as well as they played Miami last week. I think they've got a good opportunity this week against Pitt. If they, what's the spread on that one?
The spread is 3.5. Pitt.
Like I said, I think that's going to be a close one. I think that comes down to like a 3-point game. I think you could see another heartbreaker on either side, whether that's a 1-point loss for Pitt or for Cal again. You'd hate to see it back-to-back weeks, but it's definitely possible.
The over/under for that is 58.5.
I don't really like that.
I don't really like this game betting wise, because that could go either way. If you're, this would be a great underdog to bet on though, and really
absolutely. I
think Cal could win this game outright.
They played really well over the last couple of weeks. I think it's one of those that they just kind of need a few breaks to fall their way, and you could be looking at
a flag to be actually called.
Hey, we weren't going to bring it up. But
it should have been called targeting. It should have been called targeting.
Absolutely. It was an abysmal one. Nothing you can really do about it there. I think that you look at that Cal team could easily be sitting at 5-0 right now and not 3-2. So
yeah, I agree.
But if I had to pick it, like I said, Pitt has played really well. So like I said, you like it. I don't know if I trust. It's not a game I'd bet on. I don't like the spread on it. And I don't like the over under on it. If I was going to bet an underdog on the week, I like Cal for it. Like I said, Cal's played well, so it could be interesting. I think it's a game that it's hard to want to say that you're going to watch that game just because there's another game in that time slot that I think everybody's got their eyes on.
There's a couple games that I think a lot of people are going to be kind of flipping back and forth.
For having 2 or 3 TVs in the living room.
Or we're doing that. That's what I like to do. Let's get into one of those matchups. We're going to go Penn State, USC. Penn State traveling across the country to the Coliseum to take on USC. This is giving kind of like a gross game to me.
What do you mean?
Like, this could either be an absolute blowout or it could just be punt central. Where 17-10, given USC's like high-powered offense. Not that Penn State has a high-powered offense, but right. USC also didn't have great defensive statistics so far this year. They haven't been near as bad as they have been in recent years.
Well, I mean, if you look at Penn State, really hasn't played much of anybody this year yet. Except I don't know if you watched. I don't know if you watched the Bowling Green Penn State game a few weeks ago in Happy Valley. A little too close for comfort there.
They should have lost that game. I watched that game. They should have lost that. And I'm not going to bring up any penalties because I don't think there was any penalties, but just in general, they should have lost that game. They were losing the entire game until the last 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And they were getting outplayed everywhere.
Right. And you needed a last minute touchdown to a late fourth quarter touchdown to kind of get yourself in that. Because like I said, they didn't take the lead. So coming out of half, it was 24-20 Bowling Green in that one. So I mean, they needed some help in that second half to get it together.
Right, and Bowling Green was up by quite a bit in that first half at one point, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so. Here, give me 1 second. At one point, they were up 17-7.
Double-digit lead on the road.
Or no, I lied. It was 17-7, and then at one point it was 24-17. So you had some space in that. Like I said, I think it's one of those that you played up well. I think it more comes down to Penn State probably played down to their competition on that one. So
probably they are 4.5-point favorites. I think USC covers that, and this is actually my underdog pick of the week. Really? USC plus 168. I honestly think they win this game. I think Penn State is kind of overrated in my opinion. I don't think their offense is that good. Their defense is still Penn State defense. And
you look at USC this year, they've played some close and good games. Like I said, you had that LSU game where they only lost by they actually won by a touchdown against LSU. Then you had that Michigan game where it was decided by a field goal, 3-point
on the road.
Yeah. And then you had that Minnesota loss, I think, is kind of what gives you that nasty taste in your mouth. Like I said, I don't think that should have been a loss.
Minnesota's been kind of a bright spot in Big Ten, the middle of the Big Ten. They're a scary team. They have a very good defense. Their offense is not high power by any means, but that defense is really, really good. And I can see them probably upsetting 1 or 2 more teams in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's you like those teams that are scrappy, got good defenses, and they keep themselves in a game so that when it comes down to that last 5-6 minutes of the game, have you put yourself in a position where if something goes wrong or you get a turnover off of something stupid from the opposing team, that it works out for you.
Right. So so who do you got? Do you think they cover and over under 50.5?
I think I don't like the over in that. I think Penn State will probably pull it out by like 3. I think it's a field goal. I think you're coming off of a loss, coming off that last loss against Minnesota. I think if you're USC, you're still in your head a little bit. But like I said, it's a good underdog story for the week, and definitely one to keep your eye on.
Right. All right, let's talk about a rival of USC. Actually, 2, Notre Dame and Stanford. Notre Dame at home. They are 23.5-point favorites. Stanford has been kind of hit or miss. They played Syracuse pretty well, but I think they ended up losing that game, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. But I think Notre Dame in recent weeks, really since the Northern Illinois loss, they've really kind of turned it up.
Talk about that was another one of those that you almost rival it with that Vanderbilt loss that Alabama took. It's definitely not a game where you paid an ungodly amount of money for them to come play you, so you had it there and then you lose like that. But you live to see that. That's college football for you. On any given weekend, like I said, you could have those weird upsets where somebody just plays better.
Yep. That is one of the good things about college football. That's what makes college football great for sure. Do you think they cover in this one, 23.5?
I think they do. Stanford doesn't look great. I think this is another one of those games that you almost don't need to talk about it too much. I think Notre Dame should have this one locked up.
Heavy emphasis on the should,
and that's where we lean on that one because, like I said, we never thought that Northern Illinois game should have been where it was, but it happens. But I think they'll win. I think they cover it. I don't know if I like the 45.5 point over.
I'm not a huge fan of it either because it could go either way. It could be a 38-10. It could be a 24-0.
Let's see. If you look at their games this season, out of 5, total's gone over 45.5 twice. That was
Didn't they put up 60 in one of those games?
Yep, against Purdue, and then you had the Louisville game where they had 31-24.
Yeah, I think that game last week has given them a lot of confidence.
Right. So it's a big win. Like I said, you like to get a win against a ranked opponent. Like I said, it keeps you motivated and pushing towards the end of the season goals and wanting to compete. But definitely one of those ones where they've got to button it down and make sure that they do get some big wins. Just because I think that as you get into the end of the year and you start looking at who's going to make those coveted playoff spots, that you are definitely going to be scrutinized over that 16-14 loss.
Right. So as we know, Notre Dame is not in a conference, so they are not really eligible for that top 4 bye unless they would have to go undefeated, and then they can consider it. I think they would pretty much have to give it to them if they went undefeated. But they're 4-1 right now. Say they win Stanford. I'm going to go through the remaining of their schedule, and I want you to just quick fire. You can think about it for a couple seconds. Quick fire, just do they win that matchup or not?
Go for it.
All right, you ready? Okay. So Georgia Tech on the road.
Should be a win.
Navy on the road.
I could see that being a loss. Navy's played really well this year. They're a stout team.
I think everyone's rooting for Navy and Army to go undefeated, just for that whole because they play in the same conference. I know we're jumping around. They play in the same conference, so they would meet in the conference championship game, and then the week after that they would meet in the Army Navy game. And if say Navy beats Army in the American championship game, and then Army beats Navy in the Army Navy game, both those teams have one loss if they go undefeated.
Yep.
Do you put both of them in the playoff?
It's hard enough. And I think that's where we'll get into this. Like, let's say if they keep winning over the next few weeks and see if you can see either of them ranked, I think that it's going to be hard to leave somebody out being undefeated. Definitely with the amount of spots you have given to be able to like kind of allot some of these teams. I think that's the same thing we've gone through the past probably about 10, 15 years, where like you'll have some team that's undefeated, but they play in a no-name conference, and they're like, well, they're undefeated. Okay, well, here's your chance. Like you're undefeated. Let's see what you do against the big boys.
Look what happened to Cincinnati a few years ago. They got just absolutely routed in
just dumpster
the playoff. Yeah. Next up for would be Notre Dame plays Florida State at home.
Florida State should be a win. I've got their schedule pulled up. Like I said, looking at it, I think Virginia's a win. I think the Army game's the same. You look at that as you look at that Navy one, they're playing out of their mind. They look damn good. I think that's another one of those ones that could scare them. I think that's one that goes either way. I'll give it to Notre Dame, but like I said, I like my thought on that. Both Navy and Army, I think, have an opportunity to come in and really kind of show that Fighting Irish that you're like, look, hey, we get you've been the powerhouse, but like we're here, we know how to play. And you've got that last game of the season for them at USC. I think if USC keeps playing like they do, I think Notre Dame wins that one with no issues.
I think the sneaky game is that Virginia game. Virginia's looked really good so far. Again, they haven't played the toughest opponents. They haven't played like the beef of the ACC yet, right? But they have looked pretty decent. I think Notre Dame still wins it, but I think it could be close.
Yeah,
I'm curious. I'm really gonna watch what that line is set at when it opens, and if it's a touchdown, I might take Virginia with that. But you brought up the rankings. I wanted to see who actually got votes, but let's talk about your team while I look that up. Let's talk about your team, Texas OU, the Red River rivalry. Texas currently 14-point favorites. I'll let you kind of take the lead on this one.
I think that's I think we were talking about that yesterday. I think that's one of those ones that I'd take that. I think that Texas is going to. I think you could have another game like you saw the first season Sark was here, where they just blew them out 49-0. I don't like how OU looks. I think their offense is very stagnant and just lackluster. I think that this is going to be a rude awakening, and I think you look at the back half of Oklahoma's season, and it does not get easier for them. And this is
the beginning of some difficult games.
So I like Texas by 14.5. Like I said, if I had to think what it's going to be, I'd like somewhere in the ballpark of probably like a 35 to like 14 win. If I had to take a wild stab of it.
I feel like you're being real generous there. Only 35 points.
My thought on that is you've got Quinn coming back off of an injury, hasn't played in 2 games because Arch has gotten the starts, just because they're not worried about him and needing him against some of these last opponents. So they haven't rushed him back. I think you're going to have him come out, and that first half is going to be a little rusty. But I think you get him in there, he starts to get comfortable, make some throws. I think that second half's going to look real good for him, and they'll run some points up. Like I said, it's a rivalry game. OU and Texas are always they're always very close games. It's one of those ones that most years you don't see a massive blowout. They tend to be very competitive. I just don't think OU's got it. I think this is a very rude awakening for them, and I think if I were OU, I would have probably stayed in the Big 12. You just don't have a good recruiting portal. You're also not a big name, in my opinion, when it comes to it.
Coming from a Texas fan.
Hey. But that's my thought. Like I said, I could see that being one of those ones where it's like you could see Texas put up 50 and Oklahoma have like 20, 30 points. I think you cover the over. I think Texas covers the spread. It's a win for them, and they start prepping next week for Georgia.
What is the over under of that game?
Uh, 50.5.
I think that hits. I think the over hits for sure. But yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Texas covers. I do like your take on Ewers coming back, being probably a bit rusty in that first half. However, if they come out and they fly and they're up 4 touchdowns before halftime, do you see Arch Manning in the second half?
I don't know if you will even at 4. Like I said, I mean it's an SEC game, it's a rivalry game. I don't think you pull Ewers that early. I think Ewers comes out even if they're up and plays potentially the third quarter. I think you could see if they're up big, you could see Arch in the fourth for sure.
Mhm.
I've liked how Arch has looked this year. It's also one of those that I think, for as young as he is, he's patient, and I think he's gonna have a good career with Texas once Ewers leaves. That's also I like for Texas that he's already come out and said he wants to play all 4. He wants to do all 4 years there. So for sure you've got at least 2-3 more years of him there. It's nice.
Yeah, that is good for Texas fans. Now you brought up interesting to see if Navy or Army become ranked anytime soon. Navy got 43 votes and Army had 33 votes.
Yeah, so you're a couple wins away from like really knocking on the door and getting into that.
So they're in the top 30.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt was next on the list with 26.
I'm not surprised by that. Like I said, Vanderbilt
they've looked really good this year.
They've had a couple really good games, and then that one against Alabama was fine.
Yeah. Georgia, Mississippi State. This is another one we're kind of glance over. Georgia's 34-point favorites at home. Not one I'm going to watch, not one I'm going to bet on. 34 seems really high for Georgia's offense. I just don't trust them really to – I mean, I think they could score 34.
Right.
And I think they can hold Mississippi State to scoring 0 points. But that feels like one – it's not a lock. Like I feel like I'd have to sweat that out because statistically speaking, they're not good in the first half. Yes, they're very good in the second half, but like I don't want to sweat that out. Like that, no. There's no. I don't gain anything from sweating that out if I really wanted to take something like that large. But Georgia at home should be a cakewalk. Mississippi State has been awful. They're playing with a backup quarterback. I think this is an easy win for Georgia.
I don't think there's much to talk about on it. Like I said, I think Georgia rolls. You keep it simple, easy. And then I think, only worry I have about this Georgia-Mississippi State game, is the fact that Georgia has Texas next week. And I almost look at it on wondering if they're already starting to prepare for Texas, thinking that this should be a cakewalk.
That is a good point.
It definitely could be a trap game. Like I said, I mean, just to keep in mind, like I said, we'll look back on this, and like I said, and if that ends up being a closer game than we think it should have been, you kind of go, yeah, I think they got a little ahead of themselves and started looking further down that schedule than they needed to. So just something to keep in mind when we look back on that one after this weekend to kind of see how they played that. But like I said, should be an easy roll for them, and they can, like I said, and they get onto it next week and actually have a tough opponent.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good one. Back to the Big 12. We got back-to-back Big 12 games here. We got BYU, Arizona. BYU is still undefeated. Arizona coming off of their win against Utah. I think they played last week too.
Yeah, I think they did. I can pull it up for you.
Can't remember everyone's schedule off the top of my head.
One against Utah, and then they rough loss against Tech last week.
They did lose to Tech. I remember. I literally watched that game too. They did lose to Tech.
I think this is another one we talk about underdogs. I think they're not much of one. I mean, BYU's it's a 4-point spread on that one.
It's down to 3.5 now.
Yeah, so I think that Arizona looks good. I think that it is one of those ones that not to say that BYU doesn't. I worry that, like I said, they're getting some confidence behind them and they're playing well. I think it's one of those that it could be a tough game for BYU. But like I said, I like BYU. I wouldn't bet on it. It's too unstable of a game for me.
As a fan of Kansas State, I'm a big Arizona fan. From 3 o'clock until 6. Big Arizona guy. I think Arizona, and I'll take the bias out of it. I really think Arizona wins this game.
like I said, I think it's another one. We talked about some of these underdog games this week. I think Arizona's got a really good shot at it. It's one of those that BYU is ranked 14th, so you do have to put a tad bit of respect on that. But it's like I said, Arizona's already has one top 25 win under their belt this season. I don't think it's hard for them to add a second here. I think that it's BYU needs to be poised and not let stupid mistakes ruin that game. Because, like I said, I think if you give Arizona the opportunity, they're going to take it, and I think that could easily be a game that BYU loses.
It is at BYU, so that does give them a slight advantage. It's not at night. For some reason, in night games at Brigham Young University, those fans go crazy.
And then they go home and celebrate. Too soon?
Who knows what they do? But that's the most they do.
Right.
But yeah, Arizona's too talented,
right?
I think, to not consider them.
No, like they've definitely got a chance there and to make an upset, and I think you see them upset BYU. I think we could be sitting there having a conversation of them potentially popping up into that that talk for joining top 25.
It'd be tough, but they would definitely be in the conversation for sure. You mentioned upsets. The next game is my upset of the week: Iowa State, West Virginia. They are Iowa State. Let me pull it up. Where is it?
3-point spread.
3-point spread on the road in Morgantown. Another one of those places to where what else are you going to do on a Saturday night? Everyone and their mom is going to be at that stadium.
It's going to be a loud game. Like I said, you're not wrong. Like I said, that definitely could be a night. It could be a really rough upset for them. Yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting game.
Iowa State's good. Don't get me wrong. And as again, I'm a Kansas State fan, so Iowa State is our rival. However, West Virginia has looked pretty good. They looked good early against Penn State. They beat the crap out of Oklahoma State, who, have not looked good this year, but they still beat the brakes off them on the road.
And like I said, and you look at their losses this year, two teams that are ranked in the top 25. West Virginia's lost to Pitt and Penn State.
They lost to Pitt by 4.
Yep, and they
on the road.
In that first game, like I said, that Penn State game was going to be, like I said, 34.
It was a lot closer. They had a 4-hour weather delay.
Yeah.
In between halves, so I'm not going to give them the excuse. They still got beat by 22, but I think they looked better than 22-point.
Right, for sure.
There.
Like I said, and I think anytime you've got a weather delay, man, it throws a massive kink in just like the psyche and just kind of the repetition of like what a player's like wanting to and staying warm and everything else like that. So like it's hard to want to hold that against them.
Right. Cover and over under 53.
I could see that. Like I said, and I think if West Virginia wins that game, it's going to be because it's a high-scoring game. I think the spread. I don't think the spread hits on that. But I'd take the over on that one. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game.
See, I would take the under. West Virginia's offense has looked good. They put up 38 last week against.
They've put at least 30 points up every game this year, every game so far.
Right, but Iowa State has a very good defense, so I probably would put them in the 20, like high 20s, if they win the game. Like I could see like a 28-24 score line.
I was thinking somewhere in the ballpark of like 35-28 or 35-31.
Let's see. Iowa State, what have they done offensively? Love when the Wi-Fi doesn't work.
You're looking at 21 points against North Dakota State, 20 points against Iowa, 52 against Arkansas State. They only put 20 up against a abysmal Houston team, and then they had 43 against Baylor.
Right. They're not a high-powered offense. That's why I don't see the over hitting on this one. Again, probably not taking it because it's another one of those ones that don't really feel super confident on it.
Right.
But, lock it in like a 5-leg parlay, absolutely.
just on a win.
Just if you need like a 5th leg and you don't know what to pick, Iowa State, West Virginia, take the under. Tennessee, Florida. SEC matchup down in the swamp.
I think that's an interesting one because Tennessee's coming off of a rough week. Florida's looked, like I said, their record doesn't show it, but I mean they've looked good. Their 2 losses this season are against ranked opponents. First game of the season against Miami, and then they lost week 3 against A&M. Like I said, I mean that A&M game was a lot closer than that first loss they had against Miami, 33-20 loss. Like I said, I could see, and like I said, I think anytime you're playing an SEC game, there's always a chance for an upset. I could see Florida playing this one close, and I think it comes down to whoever's got the ball last.
So Tennessee's 15.5-point favorites. You think they cover? No.
I don't think so. I think that's going to be one coming off of that loss last week. I think there's going to be some worries.
Florida has looked a lot better since the Miami game. They lost to A&M at home, but
it wasn't a bad loss. And like I said, when you look at it, I mean A&M's looked good. Like I said, I mean they played well. They're ranked, so I mean it's one of those you can't be mad at a 3-2 team that has 2 losses against ranked opponents.
Right. Over under 56.
I'd probably say the under on that one.
See, I would take the over.
Interesting. I don't like it. I think that Tennessee over the last 2 games has looked very stagnant in the fact they only put up 25 against Oklahoma and then 19 against Arkansas. I like the under on that one.
Okay. I'm going to skip one and move to Boise State, Hawaii, because I think that's another one that probably doesn't need a ton of discussion. Boise State's 21-point favorites on the road.
I think they cover. I think you're going to see the over hit on that one, and I think that that running back's going to just have himself a field day.
Ashton Jeanty for sure is going to have another field day.
Heisman-like game. I think that kid keeps playing like he is. And we had this conversation off camera. I think he's got a great shot at breaking Sanders' record. I think he could do 2,840 touchdowns this season.
That would be insane.
Absolutely. But
I could see it happening. They play in the Mountain West. They don't play a ton of tough defenses. No. But if he does hit that 2,840 touchdown, is he a lock for the Heisman Trophy?
You would think so, just because of how long that record stood and how hard it is to get it. You also look back at the last 2 or 3 Heismans that were running backs didn't even have anywhere close to that stat line. And we're talking about him. He's sitting at over 1,000 yards through 5 games, and they still have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 left. So you're talking he needs 1,800 yards over 7 games. Let's see, what does that break down to? You're talking about 257 yards a game.
That's a lot of yards per game.
Let's see what his. So he's had. He's had 2 games against Washington State and who is that? Georgia Southern. That he had over 250. I think that you're going to see, and every game may not be a 250-yard game, but I think it's going to be, you could see him have 350 yards on one and 175 the next.
Right. Does he go over 200 in this one?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think he's over 200 probably for 3 touchdowns.
I would take over 3 touchdowns than over.
Oh yeah.
Than over 200 yards for sure. But easy win. They cover over under hits. We both agree on that one. 2 more. We got Ole Miss LSU.
We should have 3 more, I believe. You should have Ohio State, Oregon, Ole Miss, LSU.
How did I miss Ohio State, Oregon?
Because I don't know. I think that's the best game of the week.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, we can touch on that one. Like I said, we'll touch that one, then we'll hit Ole Miss, LSU, and then we can finish up with which boys.
Okay, so Ohio State, Oregon.
Yep. So I think that is Ohio State.
Ohio State's 3-point favorites on the road.
And that it's not easy to play up in Oregon either.
Oh, absolutely not. Autzen Stadium is a hell of a place to play.
Right. It's over on that 53.5.
The under will absolutely smash. I wouldn't even sweat that. I wouldn't even sweat it.
I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think you're going to think that ends up being like a 28-21 win somewhere. I mean, you could even see something along the lines of like 28-24. I think this kind of goes into kind of where we'll talk a lot of it's a who's got the ball last, who's gonna take care of the ball a little bit better. I think whoever minimalizes their mistakes is going to come out on that one and win.
Right. Ohio State has the number 2 defense in total defense. However, they haven't played anybody.
Right.
Oregon State, the only real game they've played, real threat, was Boise State at home, and they barely kind of squeaked that one out. It was kind of down to the wire for them there. That's why I would give the edge to Ohio State to cover.
Yeah, I think Ohio State covers. Under's going to hit on that one, and I think they win by a touchdown.
Yeah. I think the winner of this clearly is the front runner to win the Big Ten.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who do you think
has better talent, Ohio State or Oregon?
And it's hard to like want to say that Ohio State doesn't. Like I said, I think it's very similar. I think that 6 does one, half a dozen does the other. I think if you asked 100 people, it'd probably be very split. If I had to make a choice, I'd probably say Ohio State. Ohio State, in my opinion, it's not to say that Oregon's not a great like national name, because it is. I just think when you think of like that premium college football team, I think Ohio State definitely just comes to the head first.
I agree. I think Oregon has the advantage when it comes to quarterback play, though I'm not a huge fan of Will Howard in Ohio State. He is a Kansas State transfer, and I wasn't a huge fan of him at Kansas State. And then to see he goes to Ohio State was very odd. But I think Dylan Gabriel's just a little bit better. I don't think he's great by any means, but I think the X factor is Judkins for Ohio State. Yeah. He has gone off this year. He's really taken the backfield by storm. I did write down a few notes for that. 390 yards, 5 touchdowns, averaging 8.3 yards a carry is Judkins. So I think that is the X factor. You look up JT's stats. I think he put up 180 yards.
Give me a second.
On Oregon.
And I think it's one of those ones that if I'm Ohio State, you look at that game and you're looking back on it, you definitely want to, if you've got a running back that you can lean on and have them be a workhorse. So I think you definitely take that. JT had 25 carries, 192, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see 25 carries or 180 yards by any means, but I think Jenkins
I think you could see 20 carries for 100 yards and like a touchdown.
They do split the backfield with Travion Henderson, so you'll see I think a pretty, maybe not even carry number, but like 15-10, 20-15, something like that, 20-12, something like that. But I think the rushing yards, they could probably hit over 200 yards rushing in this game, no problem. Last game. This is the last game, right? I've got it wrong once already. This is the last game.
We got two.
How do I keep doing that?
Ole Miss.
Oh yeah, I skipped it again.
Ole Miss, LSU.
Ole Miss, LSU. Let's do that one because I'm going to forget about it again if we don't.
You've got Ole Miss by 3.5, over under at 61.5. They're playing at Tiger Stadium. That is going to be a loud game. It's a night game down there. It's hard to want to say that Ole Miss has got that. I like LSU just because.
I think Ole Miss covers. I don't rate LSU this year. I just don't think they have the talent, especially offensively, to put up points against an Ole Miss defense. I believe they rank pretty high in the country. I do know that they have the #1 offense in the country.
Quarterback's already thrown. Jackson Dart's already thrown for 2,100 yards through 6 games.
Yeah,
and he's very efficient too. I think he's like a 21-2 touchdown to interception.
Yeah. However, I do think the under hits as my lock of the week is. I think I got them at 63.5.
Yeah, total on it right now 61.5.
Yeah, I got them at 63.5. I think I did that one last night. That is my absolute lock. I think LSU's not scoring points, and I don't see Ole Miss putting up 50.
I don't see it.
Could they? Absolutely, they could. You're not going to.
I think, like I said, I don't think LSU's bad. I don't think they're what they've always been and what they're known for. But I think the environment's going to play a factor there. I like Death Valley is. It's got its name for a reason.
Yep, I agree.
It's a loud game, and like I said, it's a 6:30 kickoff. So I mean, it'll be a good game. I think it's one of those that 3.5 line is probably pretty accurate. I think it comes down to probably a touchdown. And then now we're on our last game.
Okay, I was going to wait until you confirmed it for me because I've clearly been messing it up all show. Kansas State, Colorado. I'm going to let you have the floor to open it, and then I'll give you my thoughts since I know this team pretty well, at least Kansas State.
Right. We talk about games that I think could go awry. I think Colorado upsets Kansas State. As much as you're not going to want to hear it.
Not again.
We'll see.
That BYU game, I was so mad.
Well, and this is another very similar game. You've got a night game up in the mountains. I like
right, but you have a much less disciplined team in Colorado. Yes, they have talent, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, but I don't think Travis Hunter is going to be as locked down because Kansas State doesn't really throw the ball a ton.
No, and I think
we don't look for our receivers to make plays. We draw up plays for our receivers to get open. We don't rely on them to get open themselves.
Right, and I think that if Travis Hunter is going to make a mark on this game, it will be on the offensive side of the ball.
I agree.
Just because, like I said, y'all aren't a huge, hey, go get open. You draw the play to make sure that it's designed for them. But like I said,
Which isn't a bad way to do it. They're still good. It works.
Like I said, my thought on that is, like I said, I think it's a close game. You've got Kansas State by 4.5. I think the over hits on this one. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. Colorado scores a lot of points. Like I said, Shedeur is like, he's the real deal. I don't know if I want to say that he's a real deal at the next level, but in college, he's
a good college quarterback. I just don't see I have changed my mind. I do think the over does hit. I do agree. I think we talked about this a few days ago that I was thinking that the under would hit. I think it does because I don't like Colorado's defense.
No, I don't.
I could see a 31-21. I think we talked about 38-21 is what you had it at for Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, I think this could also come down to this could be a 31-28 game.
Yeah, it could come down to the wire, and I could see it to where I've seen a lot of people are really taking that Colorado +4, given Kansas State's struggles on the road because they didn't play well
in the mountains.
They didn't play well at Tulane. They won that one after a defensive touchdown, which I don't know if you know this or not. Kansas State has the most defensive touchdowns since the year 2000.
That's crazy. It actually didn't. That's an
in college football. So the last 25 years, they have the most defensive touchdowns.
They have not played well on the road.
No, and I'll admit that they haven't. It's definitely one I'm probably going to be sweating, and I'm going to be up late for it.
Right.
It's a 10:15 kickoff for us.
God, which is absolutely insane.
But at least we'll have the Boise State Hawaii game to also watch.
Right. I mean, you get to watch that JT just absolutely run over kids.
Right.
Because that's what's going to happen.
So I want to one more thing before we go. We already talked kind of about the Heisman Trophy. Can you give me who are your top 3 players right now for the Heisman Trophy? Who are your Heisman finalists through 6 games?
Yeah, man, and that's an interesting.
JT's the obvious one.
Yeah, JT is just because of the season he's having. I mean, he is just absolutely running over people. Sorry, I don't think you've seen a running back do what he's doing in Perez since probably Henry.
I was going to say Derrick Henry, and he won the Heisman.
Exactly.
And the running back before that, Mark Ingram also won a Heisman. Granted, they played at Alabama.
Exactly. SEC, it's a different set of standards in what you're doing, but I think even regardless of his conference, I mean, if you put up 25 to 2,800 yards and 30 touchdowns, it's hard to not want to go, man, you know what? You're a finalist. Do I know if he wins it or not? We'll see.
If he breaks the record.
If he breaks both records, you have to give it to him. You have to.
I would agree.
If I were gonna, I'd put him, and then it's just the Heisman's such a QB. Like, you almost wish that there was like just a dedicated like QB, like regardless of what class, because they have the senior QB award.
Yeah, it's the running back one's the Doak Walker. What is the Campbell? No, that's the linebacker.
No, that's regardless. You know what I'm talking about. My next 2 that I would probably to round my 3 out would probably be Cam Ward and Jackson Dart.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
I think they're both just having insane seasons. I think Cam coming out and just doing what he's doing for Miami. He's putting the U back on the map, which everybody's wanted. It's always fun to watch him. Mm-hmm. And then Jackson, like I said, and you mentioned it just a few minutes ago with Ole Miss. Like I said, it's one of the highest powered offenses in the country, and that revolves right around him.
Right. No, I didn't think you were going to say Jackson Dart. That was going to be my like sneak in there. Is like Jackson Dart, but since you said it as well, I think we agree. But we also agree that if JT breaks the record, he wins it.
He should, but like I said,
I feel like right now, and yes, it is a very quarterback heavy award. Yeah. But I think even right now, he should win it, even if he doesn't break the record. Yeah, Dart and Ward will have to absolutely go off. I'm talking like Burrow levels of off.
Yeah.
To really give me a reason to not give it to JT.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think coming into the season, like I said, and I think had he not gotten hurt, like I said, I'd liked Quinn Ewers in that race. We'll see what he does coming back from injuries, missed last 2 games. I think he comes out and he balls like he was beforehand. I think you're going to see him climb that leaderboard for that real quick.
Yeah, he'll put himself back in the conversation. He was my favorite after the Michigan game.
Yeah.
But obviously missing 2 games does hurt that. It'd be interesting to see how he does, and I agree. I think he does well enough to kind of insert him in that conversation to where he could be a finalist come the end of the year, especially if Boise State loses a game or 2.
Right.
It may really hurt JT's Heisman status if they don't make the playoff. I don't know if he wins it. Not that he's not the best running back in the country. I think he wins the Doak Walker. I mean, give it to him now. But,
right. I mean, I don't know who else you would hand that to. What are the odds on the Heisman right now?
JT is the favorite. I do know that.
Is he? Check. This was released 8 hours ago.
Ashton JT is the favorite at plus 225.
Yeah. Who's behind him? So behind him, you've got Travis Hunter, and then you've got Cam Ward.
This has Jeremiah Smith as well, the true freshman out of Ohio State.
Yeah.
He's looked really good, don't get me wrong, but
like I said, if I were to put a random bet right now on the Heisman, just as like odds wise, I wouldn't mind throwing a little bit of money towards Quinn. He's a plus 2,000 right now.
That sounds. It's not crazy to think Quinn Ewers could still win the Heisman.
Oh, so. Absolutely can. And definitely, if you see, I think you give him. He's definitely in that entertaining spot of if they go undefeated and play for the SEC championship, you definitely got to look at it.
For sure.
Because if I had to take what I think that SEC championship looks like, I'm gonna say it's probably Texas, Alabama.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that was a good first show for Sportify. Again, I'm Alec. This is Taylor. We're going to try and do this on the weekly. Obviously, if something happens crazy enough, we may do something on YouTube and do something there. But catch us on YouTube, Spotify. We'll probably be anywhere you can find a podcast. But like I said, that's going to do it for today's episode, and we will see you guys at the next one.
Later, guys.